1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Royal Blue Podcast sound check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Royal Blue Podcast sound check. Monday show live. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Hello and welcome to the Royal Blue Podcast. It's the Monday show. We are live and I am your host, Ian Croll. Joining me in the Royal Blue studio today to talk all things Everton, we've got Joe Thomas and Chris Beesley. Joe, quite playful today. How are things? All good?
Yeah, not too bad, cheers, Ian. Not too bad, thank you.
Just a little a running joke there that's gone into the podcast. Chris, how are things? All good?
Yeah, I just wondered if Joe was going to go all deadpan then and give him short shrift.
Basically, no. Joe's in a bit of a playful mood today, so we're going to see how that carries on into the podcast. How was your weekend, Joe?
Yeah, not too bad, cheers. Not too bad. I mean, I was working yesterday, so short weekend, but yeah, it was okay.
Good stuff. Chris, did you partake in any of the FIFA Club World Cup? Football's back, I guess, in some capacity.
No, I didn't. To be fair, I got a bit of love from both of yourself online. I was my own Everton homework this weekend. I was having to give a final proof to Spirit of the Blues, and I had a lot of reading to do in a short space of time. So yeah, that was the bulk of my Father's Day weekend.
When's it come out, Chris?
28th of July is the date. So
when have you got to get it all sorted?
Well, I think that's it now from my point of view.
You sent off the proof?
Yeah, I sent that off last night, and I've just been looking at the plates briefly today, you know, the insert photographs, and they were all good. So I think from my point of view, it's the ball's in their court now, and I'm all done. So yeah.
And the front cover's excellent, isn't it?
Yeah, of course. Paul Trevelyan, excellent. You know, he's the world's #1 sports artist, so delighted that he was able to help me out with that. But yeah, I'm really, really pleased. You know, obviously it's took me a long time coming, and a heck of a lot of research gone into it, and backwards and forwards. I think for about 4 years worked. But yeah, I think finally, from my point of view, it's all done. So hopefully, you know, you can order that now on Amazon. That's good to go.
Well, we'll need to make sure that we get the link in the description for the podcast, don't we, to push it all out.
Thank you.
Yeah, obviously Father's Day yesterday, my weekend spent with the kids, but just on the FIFA Club World Cup, turned over to the Bayern Munich game and it was 6-0 after about 50 minutes.
Okay.
And I thought, I'm not having any of that, and then I realised it ended 10-0 to Bayern Munich, so slightly embarrassing when you think from...
who were they playing? Was it some New Zealand?
Yeah, Auckland. Yeah, I don't know, I was trying to... Looking forward for football coming back, and I thought I'll give that a go. Half an hour later, 45 minutes later, it was 6-0. I thought I'm not going to give that a go.
Well,
so.
I just had a few minutes of the England under-21s at the end yesterday. That was 0-0, wasn't it? Lee Carsley's under-21s against Slovenia, defending their crown. But so yeah, from one extreme to another. But obviously interesting. McAtee was playing, of course, and is one that a lot of Blues would like to see possibly going there. I mean, Joe's mentioned it. Matt Jones has, and I had a piece as well. Actually over the weekend, Sunday morning. Angus Kinnaird, when he was over at Leeds United, he fancied bringing him there last season, so who knows?
Absolutely. Okay, well, today's agenda, get your questions in, get your comments in as we discuss the latest transfer rumours and how likely they are to happening. As always, give us a thumbs up and drop us a like, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Support is greatly appreciated. We will start off with some breaking news this afternoon, Joe. We usually go early, or around about 11:30 for the podcast, but the fact that we've recorded late in the afternoon has been to our benefit, I guess, because Everton have broke this afternoon that they've got a friendly against Roma coming up. So do you want to tell us more?
Yeah, August the 9th, so last weekend before the start of the season, and it will be the final test event as well, which we knew was coming. It has to happen before Everton can host the Premier League fixtures there, so full capacity for Roma on that Saturday afternoon. They were the last pre-season friendly opponents at Goodison, and they will be the first friendly opponents for the senior team at the new stadium as well. So news that we were expecting. Obviously, they're from the same stable now. They are now sister clubs. So, yeah, completely expected. And if there was any doubt about whether or not we knew this was coming, the eagle-eyed amongst you might have spotted on the front page of the Echo on Friday a reference to this game that perhaps got a little bit early. But we were aware of it, weren't we, Chris?
Said obviously that was a mistake from the print end of our operations. But yeah, obviously, historic day, inaugural fixture at Everton's new stadium. Tony's been wondering for years now who that would be, but I guess there was an air of inevitability once the Freaking Group were in charge of both those clubs, and with, like as Joe said, Roma being the last friendly opponents at Goodison last year, it ended up being them. I suppose in terms of actually coming a week before the Premier League season, it kind of makes sense, doesn't it? A club of equal stature in many ways, really, and being part of the Freaking family, wherever your opponent. I mean, it could have been maybe some more romantic choices. Maybe someone who might have fancied Bayern Munich, even. Who knows? It would be one of the ones who would have thrown into the mix, because obviously with Goodison's greatest night. But it's going to be an exciting occasion. I think I mentioned on the podcast on Friday. Just hearing when Joe and I were there for the first test event, I mentioned to you, Ian, just hearing Z cars on the new PA system at the stadium. It's clear it even sounds better. So just being there in front of the 10,000 spectators who were allowed in for that first test event, just can't wait to hear it there at capacity Goodison, and then capacity Hill Dickinson Stadium with over 50,000 in there, and then even better, of course, when it be the first competitive match, which we'll find out about soon enough on Wednesday.
All feeling very real, I think now,
Yeah,
Joe.
it
I mean,
does,
even
it
hasn't
does.
already. I mean, obviously, this is the third test event, isn't it? Officially,
Yeah.
So obviously, the club have got to make sure they pass all those criteria, etc. But just from fans' point of view, just so exciting that now a home friendly is being confirmed. The week after, it's going to be the start of the Premier League season as well.
Yeah, and I think for this one as well, season ticket holders will be the first time they can effectively book to guarantee that they'll be in their season ticket seat for the game, which will be a big moment for a lot of supporters as well. Yeah, I wrote a big piece this morning. I'm sure we'll come on to it. Kind of a state of play around the club, looking at contracts, transfers, PSR, and everything else. And one of the big themes of the piece was essentially, or kind of one of my ways into the piece, was the fact that obviously everything will start to feel real from this week. We've had a bit of a kind of malaise over the first few weeks of the off-season. That's normal. Been a little bit busier than we expected. Obviously, Carlos Alcaraz signed, and there was the early opening of the transfer window for the Club World Cup. So there's a little bit more business around. And obviously, there's some still hanging over with the outstanding contracts that are yet to officially be confirmed where they're going. But all of a sudden now things will start to feel very real. And I kind of acknowledged in that piece that obviously the fixtures are coming out on Wednesday, so we'll find out who the first Premier League opponent will be at the new stadium. We'll find out obviously when the first Merseyside derby at the new stadium will be. Obviously at that point everyone can start plotting the end of their summers and the next 9 months really, can't they? So that'll, I think, be a big moment for the fan base and the club. And obviously, bearing in mind that they have to have the third test event before the season, that was always going to be confirmed today or tomorrow as well. It made perfect sense for that. And again, another opportunity to get inside that stadium, another date to put in your diary, another point at which it all starts to feel very, very real. And I think the transfer market will kind of also follow in that route as well. I'm not suggesting that any business is imminent for Everton, but I think that for a start, obviously, we will have to find out about the outstanding contracts over the next fortnight, because they're up on 2 weeks today. We'll find out before then anyway. But what we will see as well is we'll probably just start to see the transfer market pick up a little bit. There'll be a few clubs there that There'll be a few clubs that are slightly wary of their PSR position, and the PSR calculation deadline is the end of the month, June the 30th. So they will be open to business, and we'll see what clubs are perhaps in a better position and look to exploit those opportunities, and then we'll see which dominoes fall as well. But for Everton, bearing in mind the vast amount of work that needs to be done, they can't afford to have a slow start. So whilst I think that they'll be reluctant to kind of start shelling out transfer fees and committing to things right now, obviously, the free market, the loan market, and just seeing what opportunities come their way, they've got to start exploring it, because you probably need the best part of 10 players in that squad.
Absolutely, yeah. I think I read one of your articles over the weekend where I think you maybe suggested 8 or 9, but we discussed it on Friday, didn't we? I said 10 or 11, to be honest.
Yeah, I think 7 is your minimum, I think. I think 7's your minimum, and that's with Coleman and Gay staying, as we think that's where their direction of travel will go. Like I've written quite extensively on this, but with Coleman and Gay, with Coleman, he's been offered a playing contract, but David Moyes accepts that his body might prevent him from having a significant impact in terms of his presence on the pitch this season. He knows that's taken into consideration with the contract offer. He just wants someone that he can trust over. I think he thinks it's going to be a very emotional and psychologically challenging time for Everton, because there's going to be huge turnover in the playing squad. You've lost leaders in the dressing room like Ashley Young and Asmir Begovic, so you want someone there who's going to set standards, and you want someone also that can drive home to players that are new to the club precisely what Everton and wearing that royal blue jersey means. That's why he wants Coleman there, a trusted figure in the dressing room that can do that. And then with Idrissa Gueye, look, we all saw how well he played last season. He deserved the awards he got from his teammates and from the supporters as well. And this is where the sticking point has kind of been over the contract talks as well. There is an awareness at Everton that he is a player that's going to turn 36 in the early weeks of the season. He is a player that relies on his legs, and sooner or later they're going to go. Now, we've seen nothing to suggest there's going to be a drop-off yet, but Everton have to build into their forward planning the potential for that to happen, because it will happen sooner or later. That's why there's a bit of reluctance over 2 years contracts, things like that. Whatever happens this summer, in David Moyes' ideal summer transfer window, he builds a midfield that is no longer reliant on Gay. Gay may still be a key part of it, but I think there has to be an acceptance that if you want to get the best out of Gay as often as you can, you probably have to have a midfield that's strong enough to not have to rely on Gay playing 38 Premier League games in a season, because that's asking an awful lot for a player of his age, and that's what he wants to try and get away from. But, this summer is so complex, and, the dominoes will fall in so many different ways. We'll have to see where it goes. But that's the ambition.
Chris, let me just come to you on Seamus Coleman and the situation with his contract, and whether it should be a player's contract or a coach's contract. Because we've had a comment here from Liam EFC who says Coleman is done as a player and should go straight into coaching. Do you think, from David Moyes' point of view, Coleman could easily go into a coaching role and be with the coaching staff under Moyes? Do you think Moyes sees it keeping him on as a player? Okay, he's probably not going to play as much as what you would want your right back to play. He's not going to play as much as what you want your captain to play. But in terms of the dynamic, do you think he wants that leader, that voice still amongst the group rather than away from the group with the coaching staff? I mean, there must be situations going to happen all the time where the players will go off and do a session together where the coaches will come away. Yeah. Do you think Moyes wants Coleman still in that mix? Because let's face it, other than Tarkowski, Pickford, maybe Branthwaite, we are lacking a couple of leaders really, and Coleman's still that voice within the team.
Yeah, I think in an ideal world he would do, but as the contributors said there, whether it's as blunt as that, but he's certainly struggled, hasn't he, this last 12 months. I think that's the fewest outings that he's ever had for Everton in terms of over a season. When he's come in, he's done well. I remember on Boxing Day at Manchester City, and then obviously he was out then for more or less almost to the end of the season when he came back a few unused times on the substitutes bench. But then when he finally did get the nod against Southampton, and he only lasted a few minutes, he's tantalisingly in reach of some more Everton records. So he's now overhauled Tim Howard's for the most Premier League appearances for the club. But I think, top of my head, he's probably only about another 7 games shy of actually breaking into the all-time top 10, and which he would take out Dixie Dean, no doubt, and no less, and Leon Osman, his former teammate, who were both on 4-3-3 if he was to do that. So there is an incentive for him from a personal point of view to continue. Yeah, I don't think he's necessarily done as a player yet. I remember Carlo Ancelotti reckoning Seamus play on till he was the age of 40. You know, he had players who'd done that in Serie A, obviously a bit more of a slower pace there than the Premier League. But we've seen with Ashley Young, he's managed to get there almost himself. So yeah, just to see how. I think in his heart of hearts, Seamus will probably know at what level he's at and how long he's got to go. And David Moyes won't be taking decisions from a sentimental point of view. With being offered a playing contract, he obviously thinks that there is still something to contribute in that score.
Yeah, there's just a comment here which kind of touches on my point from the Blues YouTube channel, who says Coleman being a player gives him more power in the dressing room, and I think that was kind of my point really.
The other thing as well is that obviously Coleman hasn't done coaching before. He's got his badges, but there would probably be perceived to be a little bit of he probably can't go straight into becoming an assistant for the first team. He's got to earn his stripes, maybe like what Leighton Baines did. So he goes to the under-18s or goes and works with the under-21s in some capacity. So all of a sudden he's then taken out of that first team fold. So even if there are people there thinking he could have the same influence if he was just David Moyes' right-hand man, that wouldn't quite be the case, because he would probably have to kind of start lower down the pecking order at Finch Farm. So it'd be less with the players, less, and as a result of it, the relationships and the impact that he could have would reduce.
Oh, absolutely. I think someone made the point a while back. You know, if Coleman was to be registered as a player, it may stop someone else from going in there. But I think the more you think about it, you still want Coleman as that voice, and if he becomes the coach, you take that.
I don't think he takes anybody's place next season. I think everybody knows that Everton need a first choice right back. I think that's one of the. I don't think it's the priority, but I think it's high on the list for the summer. And it has been it's been an area that's needed that for quite some time, hasn't it? So,
Joe, the title of this podcast starts with, when will Everton sign players?
Yeah.
Now, I'm not going to put you I'm not going to put you on the spot.
It sounds like you're going to put me on the spot.
No, I'm not. So I don't mean when I've come up with this title, I don't mean the exact date. Obviously, that would be silly. What I mean by it is, from your point of view, do you think the club are going to look to be proactive? You know, with the business, try and get it done early.
They've got to be as much as they can. Obviously, it's a recruitment team that's still being pieced together, which is not ideal by any stretch of the imagination, but we do know that obviously Moyes and Angus Kinnear have been working together some time. Angus Kinnear and Nick Hammond, who's now working alongside the club, know each other and have relationships from their Leeds days, so they will already imagine they will have an idea of players that they like and don't like, and Moyes obviously will do so as well. So they will be proactive because they have to be, and I think then they will have money to spend as well, which helps. That's one thing they haven't had over recent seasons. So, I mean, in answer to your question over time, and it's probably waiting until July for two reasons. One, because the way I look at the finances, I think the belief inside the club is that they're going to be fine from a PSR perspective, but it's tight. There isn't much wriggle room, bearing in mind the impact of previous years' losses on this current year's calculations. So I think there's a little bit of wriggle room, but not really enough to start spending money without caution. So they will probably be one of those clubs that's not quite there to take advantage of another club's woes from a PSR perspective. I think they'll probably be cautious and see out the month for spending money, but they might start talks before then, of course. And then also, obviously, from a free agent perspective, well, the contracts expire on June the 30th as well. So, from July the 1st, the players become the free agents that you can pick up. So even if Everton are reluctant to initially have any real outlays of money, they can still start to do business at that point. So, I think there'll probably be a bit of a watching brief for the next fortnight, keeping an eye on the market. If an opportunity comes their way, then, they might take it depending on what happens, but it depends on what happens. There are things like, we think that Aston Villa are going to be tight, so they might need to sell to potentially free up an opportunity to spend money. And, you have things like Amadou Onana. Well, if Amadou Onana, who's attracting some interest from Saudi Arabia, if he was to go, well, if he was to go for more than £50 million, well, Everton will then get 10% of anything else that Villa make on top of that. So all of a sudden, it's these little things like with the merit payments and finishing higher up the league and other bits and pieces, which just give you that little bit more leeway to operate if something comes your way. But I think it'll be very much a case of, tracking players, monitoring players. We've got a couple of tournaments underway at the moment as well. So you've got the Club World Cup where, you might have an eye on one or two players from some of the South American clubs. And then you've also got, obviously, what I think is more important to Everton in the next fortnight at the top competitions is the under-21s. You've got England who are operating. We saw James McAtee captained England last night. They laboured to a 0-0 draw, but perhaps more significant is the form of Nick Voltemade. I have no idea how you say his name. That was a complete guess.
Well done.
The Stuttgart forward who Everton are following. And he's there with Germany. He scored a hat-trick in the first game, and he scored again and got 2 assists last night, so against the Czech Republic. So that's, I think, where Everton will kind of have most of their attention on, this over the next fortnight, I think, really, because I think that fits into what they should be looking to do as well, find young players that they can bring to the club, can grow with the club, and together they can either reach their expectations or ambitions and get to Europe, or if they don't do that, they can sell them for big enough money to help keep progressing. That's got to be the ambition. Voltemade made his Germany full international debut last month, and he struggled. And you kind of thought that might not be a bad thing for Everton. You almost want him to, if they've done their homework and they like him, you almost want him to then struggle on the big stage and make it a little bit easier to get him. Him scoring 4 goals in 2 games for the under-21s isn't going to make things any easier. So we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, I think it'll be very much a case of watching, plotting and planning and things like that for the next fortnight, seeing how the market falls, and then once we get to July, everything opens up for Everton. New PSR calculation. The 2022 summer is the drag on anything that Everton can do right now. From a PSR perspective, Everton lost about £65 million that year from a PSR perspective. Now we know from it's the rolling 3-year calculation and limits your £105 million loss. We've got £105 million to lose over 3 years, and you've lost 65 so in 1 year. That's a massive chunk of it gone. Mm-hmm. Well, from July the 1st, that falls out of the 3-year calculation, so it completely changes Everton's outlook. You add that so you have the regulatory room to spend much bigger than they have done for a long time. And then when you combine that with the fact that they've got the Freaking Group, an ambitious group, that far more financially secure and stable than anything Everton have been dealing with for the last few years, and you combine that with the potential revenue increase, or the expected revenue increase, which is going to start coming in from having the new stadium as well, and all of a sudden there you've got 3 different layers there that are all helping to build a foundation, which means that Everton can be ambitious in this transfer window. Doesn't mean they're going to get everybody that they want. Doesn't mean they don't have to be savvy. If you split £100 million between 7 players, that doesn't get you a huge amount. So you've got to weigh up who you're gonna go for your loan, who you're gonna go for your freeze, where you're going to accept a compromise so that you have a little bit of money to spend big somewhere else. But this is an exciting time, and people should be excited for it.
Absolutely. I mean, the transfer window has reopened today, Chris. I mean, pointless really. Shutting, wasn't it? It was only shut for like a week.
It was a bit daft.
Yeah. Apparently, the reason behind it is that it's got to be shut for the certain amount of weeks over the year. Apparently, that's the reason. Nice. I mean, obviously, taking into account everything that Joe said, yeah, we've obviously got to be realistic. He's absolutely right with regards to the the PSR year that is obviously hanging over Everton. But it would be nice, wouldn't it, if Everton could get one? It doesn't necessarily have to be a big signing, just an exciting signing, whether it be a striker, an exciting attacking midfielder of sorts. I know we've got Alcaraz in, but it would be nice if we could get one over the line, fairly quickly, and other players would see the intentions of the club, the ambitions of the club, and hopefully others would follow suit.
Yeah, but as Joe just said, it could all be a lot of it could be to do with obviously this July the 1st is kind of the key date, isn't it? Because if it pushes everything back there in terms of the PSR. But yeah, in terms of building that momentum, once the first one comes in, like as we mentioned, we've already got Alcaraz, but he was already there on loan. But yeah, it could be a case of one if you get a big one in early or a significant one and an exciting one, it could be an inspiration for other potential signings to follow suit and say, yeah, there's something special happening here at Everton. They're being serious this summer. So and also it also you'd be able to sort of build it around it. It was interesting. Obviously, they missed out on him, but Liam Delap going to Chelsea, obviously 30 million available from Ipswich with a relegation release clause, and Moyes was very sort of public about that, which he's not always been in the past when it's come to pursuing transfer targets. So, statement of their intent perhaps in that. I know certain people were cynical about that and was like, they knew they weren't getting him, they were just trying to at least appear ambitious, but I don't think that was the case. I think they were genuinely giving it their best shot, and it might be that they want to get like that big one in early and then build the rest of the summer around it, perhaps.
How are we pronouncing his name? Did you say?
Oh, yeah, I'm not repeating it like a. I went Voltamada, and I'm more than happy to accept it.
I'm not saying you're wrong.
If there's a crowd laughing at me on YouTube,
no one is.
In their earphones, then
Mark Doyle says,
I'll take it. I accept it.
Mark Doyle says Walter Monday will go to Bayern Munich, he thinks.
Right, yeah, so, quite possibly. So,
what was curious about him is he's 6'6", same height as Jake O'Brien, and you'd imagine, wouldn't you, that the face value, a lot of goals would come from his head. Correct me if I'm wrong. I was looking at him a few weeks ago. I think he didn't score a single header last season. Maybe someone will prove that I'm wrong. I don't know about these recent ones in the Euros, but. Yeah, I think when he got the hat-trick the other night, none of those were headers. But just curious, you'd have certain expectations, wouldn't you, for an Everton centre-forward, a potential Everton number 9, as it were, whether he wears the jersey or not. 6'6", it'd be a huge aerial presence. But I'm not, I can't, claim to have seen much of him. But maybe, that's deceptive. He doesn't actually play in that style of play.
Well, one transfer link that kind of intensified over the weekend came from Paul Joyce in the Times, who basically said Everton are ready to intensify their interest in Villarreal forward Tierno Barry. Have I said that right?
You said Barry right. I think you got that one, yeah.
Tierno Barry. So in the article, Paul Joyce has written, the 22-year-old is a leading target for David Moyes. He's a 6'4" Frenchman and has a release clause of 34 million. Scored 11 goals in 35 La Liga games. Having moved to Spain from Swiss club Basel for 11.8 million. And Everton are likely to try and negotiate down the figure. Anything you can tell us on that, is it?
Yeah, well, I think, look, Paul Joyce is normally very good. So you're not going to cast aspersions over his reporting. So, Tierno Barry is certainly somebody that's on their radar, and I think that you don't I think Villarreal are open to selling him, and I think Everton will try and negotiate a deal over him. But if you're in a situation where you want to get someone over the line early, then a player like him with the release clause that he's got might make a lot of sense, simply because, look, I've already mentioned about how Everton's ambition should be able to open up by July the 1st. That isn't guesswork. Hopefully explain myself anyway, but we've already seen in some of Everton's actions, they're willing to spend £30 million on Liam Delap. We know they've got £30 million. I mean, you could maybe argue that there was a little bit of kind of PR shenanigans there, trying to put Everton in the conversation. Moyes has worked hard to kind of get Everton to... He thinks Everton should be bigger and better. I think he thinks that in order to kind of help get there, they need to act like a bigger club, and projecting yourself into conversations over leading talents like that is obviously crucial. But they're willing to spend £30 million on Liam Delap. They have £34 million, whatever it is, to spend on Tierno Barry. So after, it's going to be a really interesting one to follow, I think, because there's clearly interest there. I think we expect him to go into the market for a striker this season. His age, his profile, it all fits. So it will be one of those ones, I think, where they'll have a chat with Villarreal, see precisely what they can do for it. And it just feels like an easy one to get over the line early doors if that's the way they want to go. And I think if they want to go, if they know they need a striker and they like him, then it makes a hell of a lot of sense to get it in early, because I think kind of going to what you're saying there about almost needing a player to convince other players to come in. It's really interesting because in January, one of the big problems that David Moyes had when he was trying to strengthen the side, obviously we only signed Alcaraz on loan, and one of the big problems that he had when he was kind of speaking with players and their representatives was there wasn't the belief in the Everton project that perhaps some of us on the inside or inside this bubble have had for some time. And you've got to remember that when he took over in January, Everton they just had 4 or 5 months of Sean Dyche. They were in a proper relegation battle. It looked like a 4th consecutive relegation battle. And when they were in terrible run of form, hovering just above the bottom 3, couldn't get a deal over the line. And when, albeit you're looking at things like the new stadiums and new ownerships and things that we know are going to have a massive impact on the club, you can understand why those outside who are only paying half an interest will say, well, we've heard about this new stadium, we've heard about potential new owners for years and nothing's materialised. I'm worried about committing to this because I don't want to end up sitting here in a relegation battle come May, or find out that something's fallen through with the club's progress and things like that. Well, all of that stuff is materialised as we've expected. Like I keep saying, this is an exciting time. The new stadium's there. They're going to have 52,000 fans there against Roma on August the 9th. They have the money to spend, as we've already seen. So other players and their representatives will start to take notice of that, but you just need that first one in through the doors. But I remember when Man City signed Robinho, it was the first one, all of a sudden you took that project seriously. Not saying Everton's project's anything like that, but they go out and spend £30 million on a striker like Tiano Barry, young striker like Tiano Barry at the beginning of July. All of a sudden it'll probably say to a lot of other players that and ahhing, oh, actually, there is some tangible evidence there that I can buy into this project. I've seen the way they finished last season, seen they got to 13th, seen they won the last 3 games. I saw the Goodison send-off and how amazing the fans were. I can see the excitement around the final test event with Roma and the move to the new stadium. I want to be part of that. So, if you want to try and do something like that, then it makes a lot of sense. It's going to be a really interesting one to follow. I think Everton have the money, and I think they have the, I think there is the justification to move for someone like that quickly at the beginning of July if they want him. If they want him, and that's the flip side. They do have money to spend, but they don't have so much money that they can't just recklessly gamble. We've seen how bad it can be if you spend money without having a plan. That's obviously something that Everton want to avoid. I think one thing that Moyes does do is he likes to take his time on players and assess them, and he likes to know what he's spending his money on. So that's the only thing that might hold them back a little bit. Because if they're not sure, I don't think they'll gamble, and that's probably what this next fortnight's about, really. Trying to work out whether Tiano Barry is someone that you build your transfer window around, or whether he's someone that you actually go, I'm not sure, I'll concentrate my attention elsewhere, and maybe in 6 weeks' time we'll go back and see if maybe you can get him for a little bit less because something else. We'll see what else we've got in our positions. I think that's kind of where they are on him.
I think from what Joe's just said, then that was my first question, or the point from my first question. Do the club, from your point of view, did he look to be proactive, like Joe's just said there, or is it adopt a bit of a cautious approach? I mean, Joe's given 2 options there of what he could do. It's a tough one, isn't it? Because, I mean, is there anyone who's caught your eye? You think, right, no, we've got to get him in regardless of the price. Obviously, we know we're limited on what we can spend, but is there anyone who you think, Barry obviously being one of them, potentially Grealish, McAtee, is there anyone you think, right, for you, Chris, let's get him in?
No, the only one I'd say on that respect, because it would be at least attempting. I don't know where they're up to, because obviously there's some huge clubs in terms of competition. Would be somebody who was on a Bosman free transfer. Obviously they missed out. I don't know if they were actually they were linked with him, but Angel Gomez went to Marseille. But then you've also got his teammate, somebody like Jonathan David, and you might say, wow, Everton haven't got any chance like that, the other teams who are in there. But, if you sell that project the way Joe said about, the opportunity, I think I've spoken on the podcast before, about being the main man, coming in and Evertonians wanting somebody to adore and to be their idol. I mean, Peter Reid actually said it about Jack Grealish the other day, didn't he, when he was saying about how he just wants to be loved again, and he thinks that, whatever you think about the Grealish deal, or whether it be good or not for Everton, he's the sort of player who, if he was there, he could sort of be boosted by that feel-good factor and the warmth from the supporters. So I'd be the only one would be somebody like a proven talent like David if it was available on the free. And I know obviously there are some huge teams in for him, but selling that dream, selling the project. But then in terms of how you go about it, like we said, it could be the case of actually going big early to sort of have that domino effect with the other players around them. But as Joe said, it's you've got to be careful really in that. Are you spending all significant chunks on a few, or are you going to actually have to spread it a bit thinner in terms of, obviously, as we've all discussed, that there are significant numbers who've got to come through the door?
The other question as well is where you think the money should be spent. If you're gonna spend big on one player or one position this summer, where would it be? And I mean, right wing feels like the big one for me.
Right wing and a right back as well.
I don't think you necessarily need to spend big on a right back, but obviously they need to sort that position out, don't they? But in terms of if you're going to choose, if say there was going to be a marquee signing, you're going to choose where to take that risk, what position? You'd probably say that the position where you can get the highest potential upside based on what they have at the moment is probably right winger, isn't it?
Yeah, I think to label it as just a right winger, because I think we've seen that. Ndiaye played right wing for Senegal, didn't he, against England, and didn't watch it by all accounts, did very well. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a fixed right winger. You can use the term inverted winger or whatever, but certainly an attacking threat, an attacking forward who would cut in from the right wing to the inside. So that I think from that point of view, I think we maybe could do with like two, if I'm going to be totally honest.
No, they definitely need two, but it's whether you spend money on one, you invest in one and bring the other one in on loan. So I think I think that what might hold the things that might hold Moyes back from someone like Thierry Barry if he costs that much money, it probably nowhere near to the extent of Dyche, but he obviously likes Premier League experience, and he does place a value in that. So that's crucial. And then the other one is that, is he better off trying to buy in a striker that scores a lot of goals, or is he better off? And I think come the end of the season, I think this was kind of his mindset a little bit, that what Everton needed, and this was held by Beto's form, was perhaps less another striker up front who could potentially score 15, 20 goals, because I think he got to the point where when you listen to some of his post-match press conferences saying, well, look, Beto's got, I think, 8 or 9 altogether, and he only played half a season starting. Like, if he'd been the main man all season, I don't think it's unreasonable to say he would have got 15, 16 goals. Now, whether that's enough and whether they'd come at the right time against the right opponents is a different matter, and obviously you need backup there, but clearly his main frustration was the supporting act. And I think when we look back at Moyes' teams, he's often had more success at finding players that can play around the striker, off the wings and from centre midfield, that can all score 6, 7, 8 goals a season. Having 3 or 4 players who can score 6, 7, 8 goals a season behind a striker that gets 6, 7, rather than finding a 20 goal a season striker. And that's how kind of complex it is, where you start to look at where the money is going to be spent and how you're going to piece it together, etc. So, I don't think that Moyes would gamble on someone like Thierry Barry. I think he'd do his homework, and I think he'd only spend, obviously, I think Villarreal are touting him around a little bit. I think they're doing that with a few players, but if there's going to be a significant outlay, I think he'll want to make sure that he's confident that it's going to have an end product, it's going to benefit the team.
I'll come back to the winger situation with you, Joe, but interesting comments here, Chris, from Mark Doyle. Slightly disagrees with what me and you were saying on Friday. He says, we need another left back more than a right back, as we have Coleman, Patterson, Garner and O'Brien who can play there. What would you think?
I think with Mikalenko, it's obviously the only one I can understand in that respect. And we did talk about that. We said that we both agreed that another left back is needed, if only to give Mikalenko the competition for places. But for me, I'd say that the right back is a more pressing matter. I know O'Brien can play there and has done there, did well in the second half of the season. You know, that was a really inspired move by Moyes that nobody would have saw coming before his arrival. But especially with as we speak now today, with Branthwaite and Tarkowski still on the road to recovery from their respective hamstring injuries, and O'Brien could be needed in the middle there. I think another thing that we said was, for me, the right-hand side of the team, and what we've said kind of already all today, right wing and right back. So I would actually probably say, as much as it'd be nice to, I think they do need another left back in there to challenge Mikalenko. Right back is probably a bigger concern. It's a bigger priority for me, I'd say.
Yeah, and I was just writing some notes down there. Just on Mark's point, I don't necessarily disagree with him, but the names that he's mentioned, there's question marks over whether Patterson's good enough. O'Brien, if he does go right back, it leaves the centre-back situation short, doesn't it? And Seamus, he doesn't play a lot. So, it is an intriguing one. Joe, just going back to the attack and winger situation, they've been linked with Ben Doak, James McAtee, who knows more of a central midfielder. What are we thinking with regard to those? Any interest whatsoever?
Well, it's definitely interest in Ben Doak. He's played that Moyes has liked for a long time. He kind of fits that profile of what you think Everton would want to spend money on as well. A teenager that's done well in the Championship in a position where they need it. It would make a lot of sense to. It would make a lot of sense to invest in, spend money in a player like Ben Doak, like a player that could be your right winger for 5 or 6 years going forward, could grow with the club. And maybe supplement him with a loan sign of someone with a bit more experience, and you've got the competition between the players and the backup, and they can hopefully work in tandem to give Everton options down the right next season. I think Ben Doak's the type of player where you could see Everton spending money on, and I think it's the likes of him, it's the likes of James McAtee. They were not going to come cheap because Liverpool and Manchester City are both in strong financial positions. Liverpool wouldn't have any problem selling Ben Doak to Everton. The issue wouldn't be over principle; it would just be over price. They obviously wouldn't cut a mates rates deal for Everton. So it's that allocation of money. How it's not whether or not Everton have money to spend. It's how you divide it up around the side, and that's why if you had to pick one of, say, Ben Doak or Tierney Barry at the moment, you'd probably say, well, Ben Doak would offer more because Everton just don't have a right winger. And whilst I think there are still some legitimate concerns over what Beto can and can't do over the course of a season and what he can and can't bring to a side, Ben Doak on the right with Beto up front offers you more options than just Tierney Barry up front and no right winger, doesn't it? So that's where it is. So.
Would you consider Liverpool's reported valuation of between 25 and 30 million as overpaying if we were going to pay that?
I mean, I haven't seen enough of him, and I think the reality is in these situations, and we'd have the same problem if you had a look at McAtee or if you had a look at some of the young centre-backs that are coming through the under-21, say, for instance, Everton were in the market for one of them this season. There's always a danger that you're going to end up overpaying. And the flip side of getting a marquee signing in, which then convinces other people that Everton's a project worth joining, is that other clubs, selling clubs, then go, oh, well, Everton have got a bit more money, so we can drive a harder bargain. It is tight. Everton will have to take that leap at some point this summer. I don't think they're going to quite be able to accrue the type of side that David Moyes wants and the Freakins want by hustling 10, 15 million pound players and freebies and loans. I don't think they can quite do that. I think they have to be more ambitious. Be a combination of all of that, but they will have to spend money somewhere, and certainly on the right wing, it makes sense to do that.
It's turned into a bit of a fiery debate, this. What's more pressing, the left back or the right back situation? Mark said, what happens if Mikalenko got injured? Who plays there is his main point.
I don't think... I think Mark is right to raise a concern at left back, because I think that Mikalenko finished strong and picked up a couple of assists at the end of the season, which is something that he hadn't done until I think his first one of the season was for Jake O'Brien, the back post header at Brentford. And of course, it was Mikalenko put the ball in for Alcaraz's header, I think, wasn't it, at Newcastle as well. But I think with Mikalenko, there were issues over his form for large parts of last season. Certainly issues over his fitness as well. He had 18 months where he picked up 4 or 5 injuries made him miss games either for the Ukraine or for Everton. There's no doubt that Everton need cover out there. Absolutely. Well, I think they need competition. They need someone that can potentially usurp Mykolenko, and I think that is an important part of this transfer window. But I think the problem with the right is they don't really have an option because, as I say, Coleman's body isn't going to allow him to play 7 games in a row. Everything we've seen about Nathan Patterson so far. And there has been a player that has played well at times for Everton. He started the season under Frank Lampard a couple of years ago in really good form, but every time he does that, he gets injured. We haven't seen him able to construct a run of games over 7 or 8, and then we have seen also likes of Sean Dyche and David Moyes choose other people. They put square pegs in round holes ahead of Nathan Patterson when they've had the opportunity to play him. Selecting Ashley Young for right back at Newcastle on the final day of the season felt quite telling, and I know that David Moyes was particularly frustrated with Patterson and also Mykolenko over the Ipswich Town equaliser and the 2-2 draw. Both of them, he was disappointed with the way they went to ground earlier on in that move. So, if you can't guarantee that Coleman's going to be available, you can't guarantee that Patterson's going to be available, then you're in a difficult position. And I think that whilst Jake O'Brien proved he can do a good job there on the right, and he started to attack reasonably well by the end of his stint out there. And whilst I think that actually James Garner is probably the most technically proficient right back Everton actually have in their squad, you have to, when you want to make the type of progress that Everton want to make, when you want to start breaking into that top half of the table and maybe compete in Europe for Europe in the next season or two, you have to have a side you have to have a balanced side that can play in a certain way and it has a coherent approach to playing football. It's a lot easier to put square pegs in round holes when you're going to give up possession for most of the game, defend the box and just try and hurt teams on the break, which is essentially what Everton have been doing for 2.5 years now. What Everton need to try and do is they need to have a plan that they can build around, and doing that means having players that are experts in their position that can offer more than just doing the bare minimum. Everton will want a right back who can obviously do the defensive duties, but they'll want someone that can get forward. They'll want someone that can put a ball into the box. They'll want someone that's comfortable on the ball that can maybe use their left foot as well. So, I think, and also someone that they can invest in, someone that they can go, you know what, we've got this player. This is a position after worrying about it for the last 4 years, not having a proper solution, playing Mason Holgate there, Roman Dixon, Ben Godfrey. All of a sudden they can go, we've got this resolved. On the left, it's clearly a problem. I think if push came to shove, I think that there'd be the option to. I'd be interested to see what Dwight McNeil could do from a left wing back kind of position. That's completely obviously altering
Seen it a little bit, haven't we, against Villa?
Well, a feature of Sean Dyche's Everton sides were that effectively the wingers were, wing backs on top of full backs, weren't they? They were asked to do so much defensive work that the likes of Jack Harrison and Iliman Ndiaye had their attacking outlet stunted, didn't they? Their attacking options and freedom stunted because of the amount of defensive work that they had to do. And obviously Iliman Ndiaye was able to kind of play through that and still had the wherewithal, the talent, the skill to be able to make an impact in the opposition's third. Jack Harrison struggled a little bit more to do so. They definitely need both. I think a right back is higher on the list. But I think that Mark is right to be concerned over the left back situation. I do think one thing we haven't mentioned is, depending on where everybody is and how you want to do it, I do think Jared Branthwaite could kind of play on the left back. Not ideal, obviously taking him out there, but we've seen that Jake O'Brien can do a decent job in centre midfield. I think if the worst came to the worst, you want to stick to 4 at the back with the current makeup. But Mykolenko was out, you could probably put O'Brien and Tarkowski together. And put Branthwaite on the left. I think we've only seen it against Fulham in the Carabao Cup in the penalty shootout defeat in December a couple of years ago. That's the only time I can remember him playing out there. But I do know that he's a player that other managers have looked at. And if you look at, say, the Manchester City interest in him, which was they kept an eye on him during the first part of the season. Well, Manchester City, they're moving away from this now, but over recent years, you see that what Pep's done a lot of is he's almost essentially played 4 centre-backs across the back 4. And he's placed a lot of value in having the left back as a left-footed centre back that can kind of operate between left back and centre back. Joseph Guardiola has done such an important job for him there as well. And I think actually the season before, Mikel Arteta was weighing up a move for Branthwaite as well, on the same idea that he was trying to almost continue to solidify that back four, and maybe looking at Branthwaite as maybe as a left back option in the way that they played. Obviously, I think they went for Calafiori and moved away from that as well. We obviously, interest didn't materialise, but I mean, talking an awful lot about a situation that we hope never happens, because Everton have the squad to avoid things like this. But I think I'll draw it all to an end by saying yes, they need a left back. I think they need a right back more, but they definitely need both.
No, I think that's the point, isn't it? They definitely need both. I think me and Chris went into detail really on Friday with regards to priority areas, and we both said we've actually been astonished that Everton got through another season with only one recognised left back, which is kind of just insane. I mean, it's we're never going to agree with Mark, because he's he believes the right back situation needs addressing more than the left back, but I just think they both do, if I'm going to be totally honest. Well, a couple of names banded around, Chris. Kyle Walker-Peters from Southampton, sorry. I'm not entirely sure. Is he on a free?
He's on a free. I mean, he's a player that's been linked with Everton every transfer window for about 3 or 4 years. There's a lot of sense in it. Player with Premier League experience, can play both full-back positions. There would be an argument to say that if you sign someone like Kyle Walker-Peters on a free, you get your backup right back and your backup left back in one position then. And then you can focus your money on signing the first choice right back.
Just on the Branthwaite point at left back, that did cross my mind, but it's not ideal, is it?
It's not ideal, but
What was your thoughts on that?
Left back?
Yeah.
He can play there. I'm sure he can. It's interesting point Joe made actually about Manchester City. Actually took me back to Walter Smith, and I think there's times when he almost seemed to play about 5 centre backs across the defence for
played Steve Watson up front once, didn't he, a defender?
Yeah, I remember I was at the game when he scored a hat-trick. I think he was playing right wing that day, but it's not ideal, but he could do a job. But again, that's why I was saying that we need to be in a position where Everton have actually got experts, actually got players who actually know those roles at a Premier League level, rather than just having to fit in. So you can do, can have it for an odd game, but if woe betide, if Mikalenko did get a bad injury, then you are in trouble. So that's why as we said, I think on Friday, you ideally every Premier League team should have like 2 quality options in every position, really.
Okay, well, I'm sure there'll be plenty more transfer news knocking around over the next week or so, but we'll just finish off, just get your thoughts on Everton's announcement today regarding the new stadium partner, Seat Unique. So I'll just read out basically what Everton released. So Everton are delighted to announce Seat Unique as a founding partner of Hill Dickinson Stadium, becoming Everton's official match-by-match premium ticketing partner, providing premium match-by-match event sales for the bars, restaurants and experiences at Hill Dickinson Stadium. Do you want to maybe explain a little bit more on that, Joe? About it?
They're another founding partner for the stadium. It's good news. Look, I think that, obviously this is a sales platform that's going to manage the hospitality, those kind of more exclusive packages, and we know that these are an increasing feature of modern football. The type of thing which I think a lot of fans look at and roll their eyes at. We've all been there at places like City and seen the Tunnel Club, and obviously it's clear that Everton are going to have something similar at the new stadium that as well. And I think with progress comes greater commercialisation, and whether or not you see that as part of the game or you want it to be part of the game, the reality is it is part of the game now. You have to find and exploit every opportunity that you get to make money, because it all matters at the end of the day, and all matters when you get to PSR and what you can spend in the transfer market and progress. So I don't really have any thoughts on either way, to be perfectly honest. It's part of the game these days. Everton would be cutting their nose off to spite their fate if they decided to go against the grain and go, well, we're not going to allow these exclusive membership packages and experiences and things like that. So, I think for a long time we've been saying that Everton need to be more commercially savvy and take advantage more of the opportunities that come their way from being a massive club in one of the biggest sporting leagues in the world, and this is them doing that. So I don't think I'll ever quite be able to afford any of this stuff, but if people are willing to pay the money, and from what I had a look at some of the packages on the website, a lot of things are sold out. And interestingly, Everton are going to hold the Ashes, the Rugby Ashes, later on in the year at the start of November. And most of these packages are sold out for that as well. Like there is a demand there, and I think we have to see that as a positive, because that means that people are willing to pay money to have these experiences at Everton Football Club, and we will all benefit, because the stronger the commercial sense, the stronger the club, and hopefully the stronger the product on the pitch.
Yeah, I mean, as Joe says, that there's a demand for that. I mean, whereas Joe and I are just hoping that we're not having to press the flesh with each other on every match day in our new press box there.
I'm sure it's going to be plush enough for you, Chris.
We're not going to get any sympathy here, mate, by saying that we have an hard life, because we really don't. We're very lucky.
I'm hoping that we'll actually be tight without. I don't know. Joe and I have seen a few off in that press box last season. They didn't emerge in the second half. But I mean, do you remember, Joe? It was a while back now. We went down and we met Vicky Jaycock and the team, the premium sales up there at the Liver buildings, and the suite that they had up there, showing us all that side of the game. It's going to be a big thing for the new stadium, because I mean they were telling us, obviously, corporate was a bit of a dirty word for them, wasn't it? It was a swear word.
Yeah, people don't like to use the word corporate and hospitality, don't they? But however much they want to bandage it up in PR, like we can all see what these are, but don't think that the club should be ashamed of this stuff. It's the type of stuff that's easy for people to have a dig at them, but this is just this is just part of the modern game now. And if Everton weren't doing it, they'd be getting it in the neck. It's
going to be a big money maker for it, because you think about it. Obviously, when the points deduction and they got the first lot of points back, and cited in that document, it actually pointed out that Goodison Park, unfortunately, was in the bottom 3 clubs in the Premier League when it came to generating match day revenue. So no wonder Everton have gone a generation without competing. If you're actually in the relegation zone when it comes to how much you're making on a game to game basis. So I think that's because there was about 1,300 corporate seats at Goodison Park, and whatever we're going to call them, these premium experiences at the new stadium, there's 5,500 of those. So you're talking, you're going to over 10% of a stadium that's a third bigger anyway. So it's going to be a huge revenue driver. And as Joe has already said, there's a demand for this, and there's the various restaurants and experiences. I know a lot of them are on the same level, and you can go from one to the other on a different match day, so you're not necessarily stuck in the same one. You can vary it up. You can spice things up, as I know Ian likes to do, mix and match. So yeah, it's an exciting thing for a lot of these fans, and it's going to be hopefully, like I said, the end game is to make a bigger and better Everton. This is part of it.
Just finally, just one thing that I guess caught the eye in the office, mainly from the red side of things, was the Tunnel Club, the glass. Backgrounds. They didn't seem too happy about that, the red side of the people in this office. What are your thoughts on that?
On what basis? What were they disappointed with?
I don't know. Yeah, they just seemed to think it wasn't football, I guess, is the only way I can describe it.
I don't know. It's been Everton put this out. I think it's been noise for about a couple of years. I was looking back after the announcement. I think one of the big differences, to be fair, what Everton have said with theirs, because I believe at Tottenham Hotspur and Man City, it really is quite exclusive. That I think a certain number of the tickets for this, whatever we're calling it, Tunnel Club or whatever, with the glass, and you can watch the players come out, would be available on a game-to-game basis for, I don't know what the rates are in terms of having kids there for parties or events and stuff like that. So it wouldn't just be that these certain ones are boxing that off. There was a degree of accessibility, but just what the finer details were with that. I don't know, but like as Joe says, okay, it can still be the people's club, but this is an important thing if you want to be at the sharp end of the Premier League. You can't have it both ways. You've got to drive these revenue streams.
If these things are selling out now, imagine what the demand's going to be like when Champions League football comes.
Wow.
There we go. And a positive note to end on.
You're right, though, aren't you? I think it is a bit of a dirty word.
Yeah.
Hospitality, commercialisation, all that sort of thing. And I think it has been in the past, but I think Everton have been criticised for not doing this type of thing previously. So, like I said, you can't have it both ways. We've got a brand new stadium, state of the art. It's going to be absolutely elite. Why not try these things? And if the demand is there, if people are going to pay it, then that's their choice, isn't it?
I mean, if you look at all these packages now and they weren't sold out, then you go, well, maybe they've made a mistake, but they have.
Yeah.
And these are packages that have been sold. They haven't been sold in the past few weeks. A lot of these more exclusive packages have been sold, really in the dark days of 18 months, 12 months ago, when there were questions over whether the stadium would even be finished and things like that. So, as I say, if the demand is there and the willingness to pay that money there is there, then whenever at their very lowest step, then imagine what it's going to be like when it gets high. Now, that's not me saying that they should then sacrifice more general seats and more general experiences for even more hospitality and things like that. Of course, it's not, but. Look, Everton's a big club with a big fan base, and that should be celebrated.
I remember when I went to America a few years ago to cover the red half of the city, and
I think you've spoken about that on this before.
Maybe not. But don't worry. I'm still an Everton fan. I just had to go and do it for my job. I was going to say, so went to an American stadium. And the press conference room, the post-match press conference room within the stadium. Do you know what? I think it was the MetLife Stadium. I think that's where it was. The press conference room was surrounded by glass. And obviously the other side of the glass was a bar where people could drink and,
I'm
do
not
whatever
sure I
you wanted.
fancy that. People having a pint while I'm there trying to work out what I'm going to ask David Moyes at the end of the game.
I was going to say...
a bit easy with Moyes and Sean Dyche, though.
I think Everton have stopped short of press conference, glass or whatever, so it's only the Tunnel Club, isn't it? But I would find that quite interesting if...
people gawping at us like we're in the zoo or something like that. I don't know.
I'd buy a pint in there, I tell you.
You'd heckle us, you would.
I'd be banging on the glass, wouldn't I?
You'd be our worst enemy.
I'd be like, Thomas, what have you written? Beesley, your player ratings. Okay, we'll finish off. Any final thoughts before we do?
No, that's it, I think so.
Yeah, just looking forward to obviously what Wednesday brings, and then we'll be able to plot out the first season at the new stadium.
Absolutely, yes. So just so everyone is aware, you're off, aren't you?
I'm off on Wednesday.
Leaving us in the lurch.
Yeah,
while he has a day off for a very important news day.
Can't work them all, can I?
You can't, I suppose. Okay, well, Wednesday, it's going to be me, it's going to be Chris, and it's going to be Tony Scott, and we're hopefully roughly going to record the live show around 12 o'clock. If anything changes, I'll let you know on social, but YouTube show will roughly be around 12, and the audio side will be obviously posted on after that. So looking forward to that, Chris.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, whatever those fixtures end up being, we're able to plot out those next 9 months, and everyone will kind of know where they're going. Okay, that is all for today's show. Please remember to give us a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Drop us some 5-star reviews on Apple and Spotify. Most importantly, enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy the rest of your week. I've been Ian Croll, joined by Joe Thomas and Chris Beesley, and this has been the Royal Blue Podcast.